add myself to the stream, then pop in Kavy and Joe. So welcome.
Hi, thank
there.
you.
So as we were chatting earlier, I think some of these questions, like the broad questions to really help educate people, will be directed mainly to Joe, but Kavy, please pop in. So Joe, what is a census and why is it for everyone?
Yeah, so the census is just a count of everybody who is residing in the nation, and it's getting some very specific and important information that agencies, both at the federal level, state level, local level, communities, businesses, use to make informed decisions. And it's also used for determining a representation in our state. So that's why it's for everyone. The Constitution actually requires it. It's for every person residing in the United States, regardless of citizenship status, regardless of age, regardless of which state you're in, which city you're in, whether you have a home or not. It is for everyone in the United States.
Great. Kavy, why is it important for people to be counted? You can speak from your viewpoint as Asian American.
Definitely. We've been doing a campaign called 10 Minutes, 10 Years. So I believe that having proper funding in our community to serve our family and our community and the programs that are available within just our region. We are having an aging population, making sure the resources and the fundings are available when the aging population gets to where they need Medicare, or even the youth, right? Making sure we have school lunches and making sure that we have proper programs in place and be able to serve the number of people that are living within those communities. So I think it's very important. The way I've been advocating for this work is really around, we live here, we need to be counted. And when it's our turn that needs those programs, we need to make sure those fundings are available and those resources are available to us.
Great. Joe, how can we verify that a census request is authentic?
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer that. I want to just add one thing that Kavy added because I really connected with it, if you don't mind, Gloria.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
One thing that Kavy mentioned was just, for instance, Medicaid. And, we don't think about how census figures really affect so much of our day-to-day, but including Medicaid. So, for instance, if we're talking about the amount that the state gets from the federal government in terms of reimbursement, that reimbursement rate, that percentage, is partially determined from census figures. So it's basically like a total average income in Michigan divided by our population. And if our population is less, it looks like our income is higher than it actually is. So we're getting less reimbursed than what we should be. So that's just one example of how census figures really affect what's going on in our state, what's going on in our community, and our day-to-day lives.
Mm-hmm.
But to go back to how to verify if a census request is authentic, there's some resources online. I don't know if I posted it in our chat, if that would be visible or available. Gloria, you might know better how to do that. But it's important to know that the questions that a census worker is going to ask aren't going to include credit card numbers, social security numbers. It's not going to put anyone in any sort of financial risk or bind. We're asking very basic questions. If a census worker comes to your door, they're going to have a census badge. They're going to have census identified apparel. So they're going to have a bag, a laptop or a tablet. There's also a website where you can look on both the regional office, if you're unsure if this person is working for the census, or a clearinghouse, to type in the person's name to see if you can identify them as working for the census. We have listed specific addresses where census mailing is going to come from. So those are some ways to verify that a census request is authentic. It's not going to be, census is nonpartisan. It's not going to ask partisan questions. These are all just demographic information, statistics that we're going to use for bettering our nation.
Joe, I have a question to follow up. What hours are the workers are coming to the home? So we want to make sure our community feels safe that they're coming in to their home at a certain hours. Do you know what that hours are?
Um, actually, I'm not certain on the specific hours.
Hmm.
Uh, I can perhaps provide that information to you all
Hmm.
and as a follow-up. I'm a little bit separated from the operational side, so
Okay.
I just don't want to say. I do believe, though, it would be past 5 o'clock, though, because we want to reach people when they're home. So some people
Hmm.
work an 8 to 5 job, and they're going to be at home at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, for instance. So I don't think
Hmm.
that would be outside of the question that we would be knocking on doors. We're going to try to meet people where they are when they're there if they haven't responded yet. But if you have any concerns about people or would like to try to avoid people knocking on your doors, I really would strongly recommend fill out the census online. That's why we're knocking on doors, is because your household has been identified as a house that hasn't filled out your census yet.
Good.
Joe, what is that website? I'll just post it out right online.
Yeah. Do you want me to send it to you?
If
So
you
it's
can
that.
post it, can you actually see the comments and all that?
Let's see. I think I can. Yes. So I would just put it right in the comments section.
Right, where it says I'll post a comment.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll put it in there right now.
Great. So while he's putting that in there, Kavy, what are some of the challenges with the Asian Pacific population?
Good question. So by serving on the commission, there are total of 22 of us that represent different region of Asia. So we have so many different languages, right? So we have different population on Poppet that makes up Southeast Asia, China, India, and other regions that we all have different languages. And we have different I would say the trust factor too, to make sure they truly understand the 9 questions that are being asked, and then also truly understand what Joe had covered, why we have to do this, and explaining it to everyone within our community that this is important, that each household has to be counted, and oftentimes people don't understand why. So the commissioners and the APA group have been very active reaching out to these communities to really get them to understand. Before COVID, we were able to hold forums, town halls, and be able to share the messaging, but now it's a little bit more challenging, right? So we have to use our personal network, or the social media, or even just talking about it within families and groups. So it's a challenge. I think now that the timing that will be expiring next month, I think more than ever that will need us to really share the messaging. And I love that we're doing this today and it's recorded, so we could actually share this within our social network and share with the population that may have not logged in to get counted yet.
Right. Yeah. Joe, what other challenges are involved with the count?
Yeah. I mean, there are certainly lots of challenges, and Kavy mentioned a few of them, and uh, some were kind of pre-pandemic, pre-COVID. Those include counting people, for instance, who are renting a home, for instance. Those individuals might be more likely to have turnover at that household, so it might be more difficult to reach them. Certainly minorities in general, people speaking a different language, those present unique barriers that are sometimes difficult um, to get around or to get over, to get through. But like Kavy said, we really need to rely on local leaders, trusted voices, our network of friends, neighbors, family members to get that message out. Because it really does take, sometimes it can take a little bit of extra effort, but to reach these individuals, but it really does make an impact. One little tidbit that I did share earlier, and maybe Kavy already knows this too, is that the state demographer indicated that for the state of Michigan, each person responding brings in about $1,800 per year to their community. That doesn't mean it's a paycheck that goes to the city of Holland, for instance, or the city of Grand Rapids, but it's dispersed in all the different programs, grants, community work that is being done. So that, I mean, that's incredible. $18,000 over a decade, which those figures are used. That's just for one person. If you're a family of 5, family of 7, family of 8, even if again, I say family, but it's everyone in your household. So it's not just the people that are related to you in your home. It's everyone living in your home as of April 1st. So if you had an aunt, an uncle, a friend who was there because their campus closed because of COVID, we want to make sure we're counting every single person.
And you said 1,800, right, Joe? 1,800 per person.
I did. $1,800 per
Yes.
person per year. That's $18,000 over a decade. So it's just incredible what you can do. If you're looking for a service project, a way to serve your community, in 10 minutes you can do this and really impact the next 10 years for yourself, for your family, for your kids. You name it. You're helping someone.
And Joe, you answered a question that I was going to ask you, because some people might think that the census is based on who's living there right now, but you said April 1st. We have to remember who was there April 1st.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mentioned one of there's some challenges that were pre-pandemic. An additional challenge that we had was is counting college students. Because a lot of places closed down right around April 1st or just prior to that. So that made it a little bit more challenging to try to make sure that we were counting those college students appropriately. Because if you're a college student, you're listening to this, you should be counted where you live most of the year. So if you're a GVSU student, if you are a GRCC student, if you're a HOPE student, MCC student, and you're living on campus or in those cities next to campus, you should be counted in those places, because that's where you're spending the majority of your time, the majority of your resources. You're using those roads, you're using those all those programs there. So that's I think a challenge that kind of came from this pandemic.
Great. So I just looked at the comments, and I was able to post that website, Joe, that you gave to.
Thank you. Yeah.
So
I wasn't sure where I could post it. I'm not sure if I have.
Well, yeah, I was able to.
Thank you.
So besides being the first one where we have 3 people on the screen at the same time, this is also the first one where we were trying to post information from our chat to the actual conversation. Also, Richard Carl Lakesburg posted, visit my2020census.gov to complete the census today. So for all of you that are watching and listening, that is a website that you can go and just do it, so that you don't have to worry about not being home when someone knocks on your door. You can just go ahead and do it. That's what I did. It was really easy. It was really fast. It probably took a little bit less than 10 minutes, but it was just very easy to do.
Thanks for posting that, Rich. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I have a question which could be a little bit sensitive. Where does the executive order excluding illegal or undocumented people from apportionment stand, and how do you see this impacting the complete count? Are you able to answer or comment on that, Joe?
Yeah. I don't know where that specifically stands. I don't have any specific guidance on that, but what I do know is what the Constitution says. And again, the Constitution talks about enumerating every person that resides in the United States for purposes of representation. So I would point to that in terms of what the census is required to do, by law under the Constitution, and use that as our guiding principle.
Great. Let's skip to the very end. What is the deadline? When do people need to have their information in by? Yeah,
so it's September 30th. The deadline has changed a couple different times. We've certainly extended the amount of time because of the pandemic. It was originally July 31st. Our goal is to count every single person. People have options to respond online. They can call in if you have technical difficulties, any difficulties responding online. You can call in at various numbers, which are also language specific. Mm-hmm. And if you've been mailed your paper questionnaire, you can also mail that in. You do want to make sure that you get that mailed in so that it's postmarked by September 30th and received by the processing center no later than October 7th.
Good. Kavy, what program or initiatives that you have that are based on the census have been most impactful to you? And both using your position as a commissioner, but also your professional position in supplier diversity.
So if I understood your question correctly, how has this impact or the initiative that I have within this work? So from a commissioner standpoint, we know that the demographic is changing in the state of Michigan. And we know that we need to make sure that we have resources from all front, from services to businesses available. So that really ties into my supplier diversity work at Herman Miller to make sure that we identify diverse-owned businesses from all over Michigan to make sure that there are proper funding support. I don't know, most people know, but we have the MBDA agency on the other side of the state that are dedicated to support minority-owned businesses. We want to make sure that when you are counted and you are in the state of Michigan and you do have an initiative to grow and build your own business, we want to make sure that there are resources available and funding available when you do need those assistance from the government. So from both perspectives, I think it's so important, right? From a citizen just being counted to getting assisted, and then from a business standpoint to make sure that there are availability when we do need to grow, especially during this time, right? You think about all the small businesses that are hurting right now, and I was so blessed to be part of the Lakeshore Advantage MEDA giving board and to see all the women-owned, veteran-owned, diverse-owned, minority-owned businesses within our region and getting the support that excites me, right? Like, wow, we got this. And we want to make sure that we're able to support those underserved communities. So it's very important. I mean, I'm kind of sharing it all over, but it all ties together. If we're here, we need to make sure that we're counted, and we need to make sure that we have presence and have a voice.
Correcting something here. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, we're correcting some dates that were on the chat. I usually don't answer my own questions, but in previous positions, I've actually used census data many, many times. When I headed up the Girl Scouts here in Western Michigan, I looked at, I was using census data to determine where are the girls, what ages are they? Where are the school population? When I was living in the Detroit area, and I headed up the board of directors for Girl Scouts there, we actually pioneered looking at census tract data, and this was like 20 years ago. We were looking at census tract data to make certain that we had coverage and that there were troops available for girls in areas where you didn't think there were girls, but there were. And so we actually pioneered that for the country. So when I was on the National Girl Scout Board, we would look at census data just to make certain that we had the programs in place. What I like about the census tract data is you can look at the births and figure out what the population of potential Girl Scouts is going to be in 5 or 6 years. So that would help us predict with that. And then from the business point of view, it would also help me predict, from minority businesses, are we being covered, and where are the areas that need more assistance from a coverage or organization point of view. So you can use it in so many different ways to make certain that you are meeting the needs of your particular group, population, organization, etc.
You brought up a good point, Gloria. It's actually a projection, right?
Yeah,
So think about businesses. How are they going to be planning out whatever service, whatever product, how are they going to serve the community, the demographic where they're at? So if we see a raise in number of minority within your community, what are we doing to really help serve that community? If we see a raise in other pockets, I think it's just a great way to project where the business could go in the next 10 years and how we're going to serve those communities. Yeah, so good point on that. And it is so important. I think a lot of businesses do use the census for projection.
right.
Yeah.
So you're going to say something, Joe, so why don't you say it, and then I have a really interesting question to ask you.
Yeah, I was just going to add, a lot of people don't realize the breadth of what the census does. We only think about this decennial, every 10 years taking these questions. But really, what goes out, your unemployment figures, for instance, a lot of that information really comes from the census. We're doing the surveys, we're doing the work. So that kind of gives me a plug into something else. There are other ongoing surveys that the census does. So again, if you have questions about the legitimacy of the census request is authentic, that website I shared talks about the different surveys, and again, how to identify making sure that those requests are authentic. But again, whether you're talking about a business, community organization, that data is, the census is a major source of that.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So Joe, what are some of the most creative ways that you've seen communities or people or organizations focus on and impact the 2020 census?
Yeah. I've heard lots of creative events throughout the region. Just here in West Michigan, one of the creative things I think was, and that was partially because the pandemic, COVID-19 and restrictions forced this change. The city of Grand Rapids has been a huge partner. They've been looking to help encourage their community members as well as community members surrounding Grand Rapids. So they've been really leading the way. And one of the creative ways that I saw happen was the mayor, Mayor Bliss. She actually filled out her census questionnaire online, made it a live event, and explained to people what she was doing. And I really connected with that because it's both simple, but it was a quick pivot because that wasn't what they had planned to do in order to promote the census around Census Day, which was April 1st.
Mm-hmm.
But they made the best of it, and I really appreciated that.
And that also, I think, was an excellent way to show people these are the questions on the census.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know that most people will fill out the basic census, but I think there's also some other, I think, a random selection of people that have to answer more detailed questions.
Yeah. So that's a good question. So in previous censuses, there used to be what was called a short form and a long form, a short questionnaire and a long questionnaire. This census, though, everybody gets the short questionnaire. The long form, which is now called the American Community Survey, is administered on an annual basis, and that's done apart from the census. So everybody just gets those 9 questions for one person, as Kavy indicated. Obviously, for each additional person in your household, you're answering those questions again, and you're talking about the relationship you have with that person. Is this person a son or daughter? Is this person a partner, a spouse, married, unmarried? So you're indicating your relationship. But again, we're just talking about those basic questions. We're not asking what's your commute to work. Those are important questions that we try to derive from a different survey.
So let's talk a little bit about the history of the census. I mean, how, the data remains confidential for how long, Joe?
Yeah, good question. So the census is something, again, that's been required in the Constitution. We've been doing it since 1790, every 10 years. And there are laws in place that require an individual's response to remain confidential. It's not shared with other federal agencies. So we think of ICE, FBI, Homeland Security. These aren't agencies that are able to receive that individual information. What we do share is statistical information, demographic information. How many males are in Grand Rapids? How many people over 55 are in Holland, for instance? We're sharing statistical information, both to federal agencies as well as to the city of Holland, to businesses, so that again we can make those informed decisions. Where do we put that school next for that growing population? Where do we market, or where does that business want to market this specific line? Because, oh wow, there's a really big growing population of this group in this area. You look at some of our communities, like Allendale area has really grown in the last 10 years. Really expecting, at least personally for me, looking, it really seems like they're going to have a much bigger population, because again, Grand Valley, for instance, has really seen a lot of growth. So it's important to capture that, because there are changing needs for that changing community.
And some of the changing needs, like you said, could be forecasted, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, community planners, they need and love this information. This is vital. Great.
So I have a personal census story.
Yeah.
So the 1930 census came out, I forget how many years ago, not too long ago, but the actual details. And if you're doing genealogical research or studies, you can actually get onto several different sites to see the actual entries. And so my parents were like 1 and 3 years old at the time of the 1930 census. So I was actually able to find their names on there, where they lived, a specific address. At that time, they had, what was the occupation of the different people in there. And so it turns out that my mother's father was a butcher in East Los Angeles. My father's father was a laborer in a brickyard in Southern California. My husband's family also, I could see that information from Massachusetts. So it sort of helps you, besides the data and the statistics, you also leave a story for your ancestors. 70 years from now, 72 years from now, they'll be able to see who was where. And especially this particular census, because of the pandemic, I know that there's going to be a lot of researchers just diving into the data to try and figure out what was it, what was the implications, the results of having a pandemic going on during a census year, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where did you find that information, Gloria? So maybe some of the viewers want to go research their grandparents.
I think you can ask your local libraries, and they're happy to point that out. But since my parents were the youngest in their family, and everyone else came over from Mexico back in the 1920s, it was pretty cool to see.
That is cool.
What was going on. Yes, and you get some interesting family stories as well. Because I asked my dad, it's like, who was this living with you guys when you were 2 years old? And so it is really interesting, because it's something that helps flesh out your family story as well. So there's also personal interests and stories that you can leave with the census. So it's not just cut and dry statistics. So.
Yeah, and that's Gloria, I'm glad you reminded me just to say out loud. So I mentioned individual responses aren't shared. Well, they are released, but after 72 years. So for instance, if you're responding in the 2020 census, the earliest that those responses will be released for historical purposes is in 2092. Most of us probably don't have to worry too much of it being released then, where we were living in 72 years from now. But it's important to know, at least for historical reasons, your grandchildren or great-grandchildren can find out a little bit of information of you and your household.
Right. I mean, so that's that storytelling aspect of
Yeah.
census.
Mm-hmm.
So Joe, please mention again that if you're not certain as to what your status is living in the United States, how does the census, how does that information, how is that kept confidential? Is there any reason for them to fear answering the questions?
Yeah. I guess I just want to say out loud, being from the place where I'm coming from, I understand, but don't completely understand. I know that there's fear, and I understand why that there's fear. Anytime that there's uncertainty, where we don't understand what the questions are, where we have political rhetoric, it can be really difficult and fearful. But at least that's where we have to kind of turn to the facts. What is the information? What is the data? So there are specific laws in place that prevent me, any census worker, the Census Bureau, from sharing individual information. It doesn't matter if that person is a citizen, non-citizen, here legally, illegally. It doesn't matter their immigration status. That information is not shared. It can't be used by other enforcement agencies, whether at the federal level or other levels. So if that information were ever to be shared, just in a single instance, that can be a $250,000 fine just for instance, if I were to do that, and up to 5 years in prison just for that instance. So it's very serious. It is enshrined in law. We want to make sure that people respond to the census. If it's not safe, if it's not secure, then we're not able to do our job, which is to enumerate every single person residing in the United States.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Joe. And I think that it's, just speaking from my work from supporting the Asian community, I think having those facts and having the right information to share, I think is so crucial and important for the individual who are responding to the survey. And because language is a barrier, and I'm happy to see that, there's been so much emphasis on translating it to various languages to make sure that there are clear understanding. So I really appreciate the partners that are working on making sure that we have it in the languages that represent the population that we have in our state and in our county. But again, we're not reaching everyone, right? And not everybody's taking it as serious. I mean, it's your job to make sure, we got to get the message out, but it's
Yeah.
also our job, not only as a commissioner or me as an individual, to make sure that if I'm going to live here, my family's going to live here, my friend's going to be keen to be here, I want to make sure the resource is going to be available for the next 10 years. And I think we need to hold ourselves accountable in getting that message out in whatever languages. So I just want to add on to that, Joe. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'm glad you did. And again, I'm glad that there's a shared sense of responsibility, because, I can shout to the mountaintops, but really my voice is being, or the information I'm promoting is being furthered through you all, because you all are trusted entities, you're leaders in your community. You're helping ensure that information is passed along. And we need people like you and other individuals who are going to help do that, to reach those places, to make sure that we're getting everyone to fill out their census questionnaire.
Great. So Richard Carl Lakesburg, thank you, Richard, just posted that you don't have to be able to read or speak English to complete the census. It offers 60 language support guides, large print, and Braille form. And there's a site to click on for a full list of the language guides. So yeah, it's trying to make certain that everyone has the opportunity to answer and does answer. The other thing that, being in this area, There's also a lot of religious congregations and organizations, and I certainly hope that they're also spreading the word, because if you think about it, they need to do their planning for their congregation in the future. Is their congregation growing or not? And in which areas do they realize that all of a sudden that they have are reaching out to certain populations that they hadn't before? So that's another organization that really uses that. So you've got education, healthcare, businesses, city planners, community planners. I mean, just about everyone outside your house.
Mm-hmm.
Does it? And when you think about it comes into your home. Utilities, so you need to be certain that you have enough, utility capacity for the population that you have, the population that might be growing. Example, I mean, because people don't think about, oh, they're discounting you, but why are they counting you? So,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And then maybe we can just use that as like as an initiative for anybody who's listening. If you belong to a religious community, if you belong to a community organization, a municipal group, a business, reach out. Reach out and talk with your rabbi, your pastor, whoever your religious leader is. Reach out and talk with a manager, an executive, because you're that connection, and you could potentially, even if they just put something on their Facebook page, on their Twitter feed, on their website, or make an announcement in a newsletter over a PA, it could reach someone. We don't know. We don't always know the impact, but it can reach someone. And again, it's helping you. It's helping your community. It's helping them. It's a win for everybody.
Yeah.
So, Joe, let me ask you this. What if you can't remember if you answered in the census? Is there a way to find that out?
There's not a way to find that out, but if you do not know that you filled it out, or if you think you omitted someone from your household, you should fill it out again. We remove duplicates. We have a process for making sure of piecing together different partial questionnaires. If someone from a household fills it out, another person from the same household fills out for themselves. So if you think that you're not included for whatever reason, if you forgot to include your infant because they were just born on March 31st and you didn't think about it, you're tired, or you didn't include your roommate because they're always out and you don't like them, whatever reason, you should fill it out again, because we do remove duplicates. We're not going to be counting people twice. And if there's any doubt, please fill it out.
Great.
No, that's good to know.
That is good to know. So we're almost at the end of our time, but I'm going to ask each of you this question. Kavy, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you'd like to mention regarding the census?
I think you covered it all. I know during our connection prior that we went on live, I was going to share some statistics of what the it's not tracked by race or ethnic, but it's based on demographic and what we could project. But we were able to see from the 405 tracks that approximately 70% of Asian American have responded to the census. So we have a little bit more work to do. That was a question that I asked Joe, like, what do we have to do yet? I mean, this is almost a sprint now, right? We're 6 weeks away before the ending of the survey. I'm glad to hear that we could go back and take the survey again, just in case we forgot something. And when we share with our friends and family and the community, if they we could just say that, hey, just go do it again, because the system will kind of take out the duplicates and make sure that you're counted. So that's a new message that I heard today. I didn't realize that you could go back and retake it again. Also, I just want to make sure that the residents feel comfortable when the official business census survey go to the door, and that's why it's so important to make sure that they have the badge. And do they have to present that badge when they go to the resident? before they start having the conversation. I just want to make sure that that people feel comfortable when they do approach them, for the ones that haven't taken the census yet. Can you answer that, Joe? Like, are
Yeah.
they, what's the process exactly? I know you said you're not on the operations side, but unless if you know that response.
I don't know the specific steps for in terms of engaging with a person at the door, but typically the badge is worn right around their neck.
Okay.
So it should be something that's visible.
Okay.
If for some reason it's not visible, certainly ask them.
Okay.
Everybody, people who are working for the census want to serve their community. They're from that community. So we try to hire people, for instance, if you are living on the southeast side of Grand Rapids, then we're going to hire someone from there to work in that neighborhood. So this is, you might even know the person who's knocking on your door. So that's, I think, also adds to a comfort level in terms of who's knocking at your door. And,
Okay, good.
So what happened, and actually that brought up a question before I let you, Joe, have your final comment. What happens if you speak a different language and someone does come to your door and you can't really communicate? How do you know what that type of a conversation might, or that might be?
So I think there are different scenarios that can happen. One, for instance, so a person knocking at the door might have different resources to at least indicate why they're there, and maybe help determine what language that person speaks. And if necessary, we could try to get present at a future date a person who does speak that language, that need. If there's no one else in the household that can speak English, for instance. So even if you speak a different language, we want to make sure that we're including you in the count, that you have the opportunity to respond.
Joe, you mentioned that they have a smart device when they come to the door. Is there an opportunity where they could just hold the smart device and pick a language and they could read the questions in their native language there, if they're able to? I didn't know if that was an option instead of trying to reschedule someone to come next time.
Yeah, so for instance, there are, the census questionnaire is available in other languages, but it's not available in all 60 languages or so that we offer support in. So for instance, if you wanted to do it in Spanish, for instance, that could be available. But if you were trying to answer those questions and have it be visible in Burmese, that's not something that's offered.
Okay. Good to know.
So, Joe, is there anything that we didn't cover that your final parting words to us? Yeah,
and sorry if I said the language. I'm not in terms of Burmese. I'm not sure if that's correct, but the language spoken in Burma. I would say, what can people do? I really want to make sure that this is kind of like a call to action. I already mentioned, talk with people in your network. So talk with family, friends. You are your trusted voice in your network. And if you can just further that, if you believe in this, which I hope you do, especially after listening to this video, if you've already filled it out, your next step is making sure that people around you have filled it out. So that's super important. Let's see.
Share this video.
Share this video, absolutely. You can also work for the census still. So you can go to 2020census.gov/jobs, and you can apply to work as a census worker. You will be paid, as I mentioned. We try to hire people from that neighborhood to work in that neighborhood. So that's a way to serve your community and also earn some dollars. If some of our lowest responding areas in West Michigan include Muskegon Heights, include the GVSU Allendale area, include the city of Grand Rapids. If you are an organization, if you're connected with an organization in that area, we're sending out census representatives to hold what's called mobile questionnaire assistance centers. So we send census workers to these places that agree to receive us, and we'll set up a table outside, practice social distancing, have a mask on, have other personal protective equipment, and we will help you fill out the census right there and then. So if you don't want to do it on your own computer, if you don't want to call, if you threw away your mailed invitation and you don't want to answer the phone, answer the door for whatever reason, you could go to a mobile questionnaire assistance place at your grocery store, for instance. So if you want to approach your grocery store and then relay that information back to me, we're happy to send them to these places. Again, it's only in the lowest responding areas, though, because we have limited resources, and we want to make sure that we're targeting those areas. So.
Joe, you just gave me an idea. Jody and Rich, I've been working with them. We do have several Asian grocery stores in town. We should probably bring some team members out there and just stand outside and have a table. You just reminded. See, this is why we learn from each other, right? What
Yeah.
was some creative ways that we could reach the residents? So I hope you heard me, Rich. That's what we could do next.
That's wonderful. Reach out to me, and if you don't have, I can. Gloria, if you want to put my contact information, my email in the comment box, or you can just reach out to Gloria or Kavy, please. We only have 1 month and a handful of days left. We want to make sure that Michigan maintains its appropriate representation, our representation in Congress, that we get our funding, whether we're talking about schools, roads, our healthcare system. It's super important. So.
Yeah.
Typing as like you're talking. Make sure.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks for posting that.
Well, thank you so much. If you can, just stick around for a couple minutes afterwards, then while I finish up my conversation. Thank you, Kavy.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Please share this particular one if possible, because it's very important that we all get counted in whatever way that we can. So again, all these community conversations are on our website, and that is, let me just get that website up there, is on our website as well as on our YouTube channel, and it's called LEDA Ethnic Diversity, and our Facebook channel. So for the next 3 weeks, we're going to have some very special community conversations. The United Way of Greater Ottawa County is having a 21 Days of Equity Challenge. And if you haven't signed up for it, please go to their website. And I unfortunately don't have that information by hand right now, but we will get that on our website, on our social media. And what we're going to be doing for the next 3 sessions, next 3 Wednesdays, is I'm going to have Liz de la Luz from the United Way and Robin Afrique, who is the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Director for Ottawa County. So the 3 of us will be talking about the previous 7 days challenge and our reflection on it. And you will be able to make your comments and also ask questions and give us your thoughts as to how you were doing that. So please tune in the next 3 weeks for a very special series of community conversations. And again, thank you so much from LEDA. Take care, everybody.